Three wide receivers to the bottom of your screen. It's Henry again trying to find some room around the outside. Robert Henry Jr. Touchdown Commanders.
Some people are just gamers, man.
Yeah. Robert Henry, that would be Robert Henry Jr. Thank you, Dan Helly. Thank you, Brian Mitchell. Preseason game number 1 in the books. Yeah, Robert Henry Jr., the rookie from UTSA, was impressive on Friday night, preseason. Biggest takeaway, really, that is of substance is that Marcus Mariota got hurt, sprained MCL. Hopefully will be back and ready for the season opener in Philadelphia on September 13th to back up Jaden Daniels, who did not play as most of the starters sat on Friday night. Good morning. Preseason week 1 in the books. A lot of underdogs, a lot of unders in week 1 of the preseason, if you're into that kind of thing. A lot of underdogs. Washington was a big underdog on Friday night. I say big. They were a 3.5-point underdog at kickoff, which seemed a bit surprising, but the Dolphins played their starters, or some of them, for the first few drives, and it showed in those first few drives, and then kind of evened out and tilted the other way as the action went along. I am going to have a preseason game number 1 recap. It'll be coming up in just a moment. Max is with me on the show today. Ben Standig will jump on at 12. Their next preseason game comes Saturday afternoon in Detroit. Washington just signed a former Detroit running back just moments ago. I'll tell you who that is coming up here shortly. This from Denny to open up the show. Denny writes, Kevin, is the reaction to Jaden Daniels a bit much and even more than you thought it would be? Question mark. Yeah, this is one of the all-time PR blunders. I mean, Jaden has been made sport of for now 4 consecutive days. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it with a player that is so universally respected and well-liked. And I'm not talking about just fans or people in the media. I'm talking about the people he works with. Just so you know, he is highly respected, well-liked. There are none of these, behind the scenes. Yeah, you know what? I know it looks like everything's great, but trust me, behind closed doors, he's not that. He's different and he's difficult. None of that. You haven't gotten any of that in the first 2 years. It's all been positive. No one will tell you that behind the scenes, they're hearing any sort of, yeah, but, he's really not. No. I know I'm a big fan. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan. Have been since day one. But if I was also a big fan of Robert Griffin III. I thought it was one of the greatest rookie seasons ever. I was predicting multiple MVPs in the middle of 2012. Look, I don't think he had anything to do with this. I talked about this certainly Thursday. The first reaction before it really blew up was, to Denny's point, I'm like, this is a major self-inflicted blunder. Whomever is responsible for it is going to regret handling this issue the way they've handled it. It's terrible timing. It's terrible tact. Both were true in the moment. But no, I could not have predicted every single sports team across America wiping out number 5 from any sort of conversation. Some of them are funny. Most of them are just not. I can't believe this guy's been piled on the way he's been piled on. Again, if you were listening Thursday morning, I said this is total self-infliction. This was unnecessary, and whomever's responsible for it needs to learn from it, because this was terrible, terrible advice and a terrible, public relations thing to do. I don't think he had much, if anything, to do with it. I think he's just as disappointed as everybody else. I think the overarching thought from almost everybody from Baton Rouge to Washington is that his mother was at the center of this. She is his mother. She is also his agent. The problem is that sometimes parents create more problems than they are able to solve when they're involved with their kids in sports. And yes, there is a cutoff for that. It's like 8th grade, 9th grade, when they're able to begin advocating on their own behalf. It's real simple with this one. If she and anybody else don't learn from this, we're going to get more of these distractions down the road. And that won't be good for Jaden, and it won't be good for the team. I had somebody say to me over the weekend, look, at this point, it's now the team's job to completely cut out whatever sort of benefits people close to the quarterback are getting. They cannot be involved. They can't be signing autographs, during practices and joint practices, or deciding on, a joint practice, I'm not signing today, like she's the star or somebody else close to him. They're the stars. They're not. They're immaterial to all of this. Hopefully, they've learned a lesson. Hopefully, that will be the final distraction. And unlike Paul Feinbaum and others, I actually don't think that this is something that Jaden can't recover from. And I'm talking specifically about the relationship with LSU that has been damaged severely. I think he's good as a person. I think he will be great as a player. And I think that relationship is recoverable. I think that others were being hyperbolic in terms of that relationship being dead in the water, over. They made a mistake. The timing of it was terrible. Anybody with any sense of anything in terms of how the public will react could have said to them, enough, stop right there. Somebody reached out to me over the weekend to say, this reminds me of like the old days, where if they just came to a few people in the market that have been here forever and said, hey, what do you think about this? What if we do this? No, don't do that. That's an obvious don't do. But Dan and Bruce, Jason Wright, all of those people, they always sat behind the doors in Ashburn and made one stupid decision after another. Now, this was not the team. The team had nothing to do with this. Nothing. So the analogy is not a good one. But as it relates to Jaden's team, they might want to, in the future, before they decide to do something that has the potential to become newsworthy, check with some people who might have a good sense of how it might turn out. All right. Yeah, I did not think it would blow up the way it's blown up. I actually think it's really piling on. And in some cases, it's not even really, to be honest with you, that entertaining. They're just major reaches. There have been a couple that have been funny, but not really. I hope that he is dialed in, as his statement said, on football, and I hope he's moved on from this. This is not him, people. Not him. It just isn't. The issue is, you can say this is a big nothing burger. It would be the biggest nothing burger of all time. And it ceases to become a nothing burger if the possibility of it happening again is still there. So the grown-ups involved have to make sure that this doesn't happen again and doesn't create an absolute unforced error and an unnecessary distraction for everybody. The good news is they're not playing real games right now. The good news is a month from now, hopefully we'll be talking about a season-opening win where he threw for 320, rushed for, I don't want to make it 100. Let's say he just rushed for 52 yards on just 4 rushes. How about that? And had a couple of touchdowns, and they beat the Eagles. Story over, obviously, for us. It will linger for him in Baton Rouge. I feel sorry about that because having that relationship with the place in which you won a Heisman Trophy and created so many memories for not only yourself, but the fan base, to have that end, and I don't think it will. I think it'll come back at some point. That would be sad. And especially knowing that it's not his doing. You know, all the LSU people seem to really have a grasp of this. And it's like they have a sense that this isn't him either. But it would make sense for him to come out and say, look, I love LSU. What happened last week was not something that I was really a part of or intended to happen. I absolutely don't want my name, image, and likeness erased from LSU's history. I'm a part of that. Look, the name, image, likeness thing, there's a lot of complications there with a lot of athletes. The way the NIL deals are structured, they're not in perpetuity. But at the same time, LSU can't eliminate him from their history. Team photos, team films, and videos. Understood if they're continuing to prop him up solo and make money off him. But I don't know. There was a mutually beneficial relationship. Usually is. You know, these players can't go from high school, wait 3 years to the number 2 overall pick. They have to play college football. They've got to do it in conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten. They've got to do it at institutions that have, you know, over a century of history and of brand built up. It is a tremendous marketing platform, college sports are in this country. And players that play them benefit from them because it's a free marketing platform. And now they're getting paid on top of that. All right. Should we get to my thoughts on the game? Do you want to break first? Why don't we break first?
Let's do that.
Then we'll come back and I'll give you my good, my bad, the others from the game on Friday night. And I want you guys to weigh in as well. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right, it was Friday night. The final score, if you're actually interested, Washington won the game 20-7. That makes Dan Quinn now 8-20 as a preseason head coach. I don't know if I mentioned that on Friday. He had one of the worst preseason records as a head coach of any current NFL head coach, winning percentage wise. He was also, by the way, before Friday night, 6-21 against the number as a preseason head coach. Well, he got the win and he got the cover on Friday night. So I'll start with kind of the obvious, and I say obvious, it's obvious to most of you, but still probably worth mentioning to some of you. Preseason games are primarily for player evaluation, not overall team evaluation. Now, some observations, about the team can be made occasionally, like the team's energy or lack thereof, that can be something to note. But these games aren't played for the purposes of improving your position in the standings. They're played to evaluate players. And for the most part, a large percentage of the players being evaluated are players who are just fighting to either make the 53-man roster or even just make the practice squad of up to an additional 17 players. 26 of the 90 didn't dress. And most of those that didn't dress are starters or, immediate backups or expected rotational players. They didn't play on Friday night. So you got to start with that. The other team actually played some of their starters early in the game. But for our team, no Jaden Daniels, no Terry McLaurin, no Stephon Diggs, no Chiga Okonkwo, no Bill Krosky-Merritt, no Rashad White, Josh Connerly Jr., no. Sam Cosmi, no. Nick Allegretti because he's hurt, no. I mean, basically like 9 or 10 of the expected starters, were out. And then the defense, same thing. No Kinlaw, no Payne, no Settle, no Owe, no Chason, no Luvu, no Armstrong. He's coming back from the injury. No Amos, no Sanderstil, no Nick Cross, no Jeremy Reeves, who's expected to be either a starter or a significant player at safety, no Meek Robertson. So, you add it all up. It's like 90% of the players for our team that you'd expect, knock on wood, to be on the field on September 13th against Philadelphia did not play. On defense, we did see first-round pick Sonny Styles, and we saw one of their big free agent acquisitions, Leo Chenal, out there in terms of players that we're expecting to see a lot of come the regular season. Some of you get very much into trying to evaluate, the game flow, the result of the game, situational football. Don't do that. It makes no sense to do that in these games. The players that will be out there when the real games begin were not out there on Friday night. Add to that, the backups and the backups to the backups in the case of our team actually did face some Miami starters early in the game. I would say one thing with respect to, it's just for player evaluation. I think when you're a team like Washington, because you've got 2 new coordinators and neither coordinator's ever done it in a game before, evaluating them isn't crazy. But really, to be honest with you, it's more for those that could listen in on the headset, like the head coach, to really evaluate it. And actually, Dan Quinn was asked about Blau and Durante Jones on their first night of calling plays. I'll play for you coming up in a few minutes what Quinn said about their first night calling plays. So anyway, with all that understood, here it goes for what it's worth. My observations. And look, you get into the second half of that game. That's tough. I mean, if you're a football fan and you know the difference between what you're watching now versus what we'll be watching in a month, it's really, I've said this before, it might be the worst product offered by any of the 4 major professional sports. Preseason NFL football. Obviously, spring training baseball is important. You get all of the real players playing in the games. The NBA's regular season, you get starters playing in those games. I mean, they're not, the NBA regular season is a hard watch. I can't speak to what hockey does. But the NFL preseason offering is literally only for, hey, football on TV, and hey, we don't have to pay the players, so this is a net profitable situation for the teams. All right, the things that stood out for me, my observations from this game. Number one was Robert Henry Jr., the running back from UTSA. I thought it wasn't even close for me in terms of the player that made the most positive impression on me. He was running with the 2s and 3s against 2s and 3s. But, with running backs, you can identify natural ability, and he has it as a runner. Excellent vision, patience, burst. Riggo was on the call. He did a great job with B. Mitch the other night in Helly. I thought it was a really good broadcast, actually. Look, it's the game is secondary to, you have to turn those nights into more of a talk show. And I thought the chemistry between the three were really good. Riggo, who has always said, for years, Riggo has said, if you ask him what was the most important attribute that he had, he'd say his eyes, his vision. Like Riggo had phenomenal feel and vision. He saw it before it happened. And that is natural. It's innate. And Robert Henry Jr. has that. He's got excellent vision, patience. He's got burst. He's really good with his feet. He's in his cutting ability. He's decisive. He played at UTSA, and I went back and looked at this just to see what he did because there wasn't a whole lot of discussion and hasn't been a whole lot of discussion about him. He had one of the best games. The first thing I noticed in looking through his game log is the season opener last year at UTSA. He went for 16 carries, 177 yards, 11.2 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns in the season opener against Texas A&M. If you know anything about college football last year, Texas A&M's defense was stout. Now, it kind of fell apart a little bit towards the end of the year, and then in the playoff game against Miami, especially late in the game when Mark Fletcher, who's coming back for the Canes, had some big runs. But A&M's defense early in the season was really, really good. And this kid had a $177 on 16 carries for 2 touchdowns and a 42-27 loss. He's not big, but he is built for a zone run scheme. And I went back and looked at UTSA a little bit. They ran a bunch of inside and outside zone, and he was very effective at it. So clearly one of the reasons they liked him, brought him in, is they saw that he has the natural ability to be a really good zone runner. I don't know if there's room for him on the roster with Kaytron Allen, and Kaytron Allen being a drafted player. Perhaps that's a factor. I don't think it should be when you're a 6th-round pick. Allen did a pretty decent job, after, the beginning. Dropped a pass. I'll get to that in a moment. But, I thought Robert Henry Jr. helped himself a lot, whether it's for this team or somebody else. Number 2 on the good list for me was Antonio Hamilton Sr. So we've got a junior and a senior. I thought number 34 made an impression on defense and on special teams. And I went back and I looked at my notes when he was playing at the end of last year, and I had him on my good list twice, including in the game against the Giants late, where he was outstanding on defense. They brought him back, a month or 2 ago? It was kind of at the same time, maybe right before, right after Rasul Douglas. He was outstanding on special teams last year. He, as I mentioned, he played well at corner late in the season against the Giants in particular. I had him in my notes as one of the players that stood out in that game. He hits for sure. He had a pass breakup in the game. He had a tackle for loss in the game. Talked about on Friday's show that, one of the things you want to see, and it's total coach speak, but coaches will say, especially, in scrimmages or preseason games, man, make mistakes, but make them at full speed. That dude was full speed all night long. Antonio Hamilton Sr. I thought the rookie from Tennessee, Joshua Joseph, stood out a little bit to me. Not so much because of anything he did in spectacular fashion, but it was the way he looked and moved. He backed up James Pierce 2 years ago at Tennessee. Pierce had that incredible rookie season and then got arrested, and who knows? I think he's been suspended already for 8 games for this year. But he's really a good-looking physical specimen on a football team that we think is going to play football the way Minnesota did. He's tall, he's lean, he's long, he moves, he anticipates. The kind of athlete that I think Durante Jones will love doing something with. I don't know about the intangible stuff with him. That's always important. I know that he had an outstanding joint practice against the Dolphins on Wednesday, but I thought that Joshua Joseph's stood out a little bit. For me, he did. Number 48, if you don't know what number he was. And then number 86, Jaden Bradley. He's the guy that Terry McLaurin said so many really good things about during the spring. So he's a big, tall receiver. He looked fine as a receiver. He had a couple catches, but he almost blocked 2 punts in the game. I know these aren't the special teams units that you're going to face in the regular season, but when you're trying to make a football team or even a practice squad, and in one preseason game, he was so close on both. And then he had the 2 catches. I noticed him. That's why I put him down here. That was pretty much it on the list of things that really stood out. Like, okay, that's worth noting. On the opposite list, the list of things that weren't so good from the game, again, for what it's worth, obviously you start with the Marcus Mariota injury. Marcus Mariota has a sprained MCL. He's not going to be available the rest of the preseason. That's fine. He's missed preseason time already since he's been here. But the expectation is he'll be ready on September 13th, and that's all that matters. The Allegrettis, the Trey Amoses, the Settles, and now the Marcus Mariotas. You just want – these games don't mean anything. You just want them to be healthy and ready to go when we get to September 13th against Philadelphia, and hopefully he will be. I'm glad, you saw that he played an extra play after the knee. Glad that he took himself out because regular season game, Marcus, pretty tough guy. He probably would have stayed in there with it. So that was number 1 on the list of things that were not very good. By the way, we're opening up phone lines if you want to weigh in on the preseason game. 301-230-0980. Anything you liked, anything you didn't like. So the second thing on my list is this. This is more of a 1-unit evaluation, but I've got a couple of player evaluations to go along with it. I just didn't love the way the defense looked early against Miami's ones. Malik Willis was out there. Achane was out there. They had some of their starters out there on offense for Bobby Slowick, their new offensive coordinator, calling plays. Shanahan, Kyle, McVay, the whole tree. Look, no game planning means a lot, okay? When you're not game planning defensively, you really can't evaluate, oh, my God, they got run over. The first drive of the game, Miami goes down the field and scores on a 14-play, 93-yard drive, eating up 7 minutes and 6 seconds. You can't view it in that context as if to say, oh, my God, here we go again. No, our defensive players, all the new ones, weren't out there with the exception of Styles and Shenault in terms of players that they expect to be significant come opening day. But with that said, there were some players on the field like Styles and Shenault and Johnny Newton. And my biggest concern, and I've voiced this before about Styles, as a young player in particular that isn't necessarily at full physical maturity yet. It's possible he isn't. You're going to have to, in a base 3-4, you're going to have to keep those double teams off of him. You're going to have to keep those big offensive linemen off of him in the run game. Look, the pass rushers that they've added are great. I'm excited about Owe and Chason and Dorrance Armstrong as a healthy player and what Luvu can do as a pass rusher, etc. But you're not going to be in favorable pass rush situations if you can't stop the run. Number one defensively for this team in 2026 is you've got to be a better run-stopping team. The Eagles are going to try to run the football in week one. Dallas with Javonte Williams is going to try to run the football. Seattle's going to try to run the football. These teams are going to try to run the football. 3rd and 2 is not a great pass rushing down. If you don't get to 3rd down because you can't stop the run and you don't have enough 3rd downs in the game, your pass rush results are not going to be great. Sometimes the best offense is your first down offense because you can avoid 3rd down by being great on 1st down. You've got to stop the run this year. And Styles, I'm excited about him. Don't get me wrong. And nothing about his performance. What did you say to me? You said something to me before the show. Somebody's breaking down Sonny Styles preseason and comparing it to his teammate Arvell Reese.
Yeah, it's the folks on Twitter. It's NFL Film Twitter. Once they get their hands on the all 22, they start breaking everything down
for
like they know it all.
Come on.
Kevin, we're starved for football.
How many plays was Sonny Styles out there for 2 drives, right?
Like 2 drives, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so look, I will say, though, that the number one thing with Styles as a rookie to watch, in my opinion, is can he hold up physically, strength-wise, against the run when offensive linemen get to him on that second level. It's going to be a big, big job for Payne and Kinlaw and Settle and company to do a really good job up front. Edge setting obviously will be a big deal with whomever they have out there on early downs to set edges. You got to stop the run, or you cannot be, rarely can you be, a good pass rushing team if you're a bad run stopping team, because you don't have the proper down and distances that work in your favor to be a good pass rushing team. By the way, Quinn had something to say, right, about that opening drive for Miami. Here's what he said.
And the first defensive drive may not have been the favorite moment.
It certainly was not.
Night.
Yes.
So what are some of your immediate reactions to that drive specifically?
Yeah. So early on, I thought just in the run game, it felt, like they were, moving yards after contact. Didn't love how, pass rush to, affect Willis into that space. So although we started slowly, I thought we picked up, steam after that. But as far as the first drive goes to, take it all the way down the field, because kicking off, I think they might have muffed, the catch to go, and then to have a long drive, it's like, damn. So I wanted to find out their resilience and fight. And so to see them come back and get stops after that, I was pleased. But I just thought we needed to start, a little more aggressively, not from a play calling standpoint, just, like how we play.
Yeah. I mean, it helps when their starters exit after the first drive. That helps. No Achane and no Malik Willis after the first drive, and then things started to get better, although actually on the second drive they weren't that much better. It just ended with, a fourth down stop that kind of turned the tide a little bit. But against, it was Washington's twos and some, just call them the twos, with maybe, a couple of ones and Styles and Chenal on the field against Miami's ones. And it was, without game planning, it just wasn't pretty because they were getting manhandled up front. I don't even know if it was yards after contact. There seemed to be the yards after contact came after maybe 3 or 4 yards down the field. So that was just, an observation. And I think I brought it up primarily because I wanted to say about Sonny Styles, there's so much to be excited about, but he's a rookie. And he's physically maybe not at the, level that that'll be at in 2 or 3 years. And it's going to be really important that they do a good job up front to keep the big trench guys off guys like Sonny Styles in the run game. Next up on the list of things that I didn't like, Well, I mean, look, the kicking situation is something you can definitely evaluate in a preseason game. And, Jake Moody doinked one in from 29 yards out. Not a good look. Not a good look. When you're doinking things in from 29 yards out and you missed a 24-yarder in the season finale last year, that's like scary stuff. It's like, Jake, you don't have the leg that the other guy has, which means you better be perfect inside 49 and less. And he doinked one and missed one from 24, and then he doinked one in from 29. Stevens, by the way, if you didn't notice this, he made his extra point and he made his lone field goal. But the extra point, the first extra point and the only extra point he kicked, I don't know if you saw this, but he actually missed the first attempt, but the whistle blew the play dead before it started. He actually pushed it right. I mean, it could have been the whistle that sort of stopped the play and forced the push right. But that was the result of the post-whistle non-play PAT. But, yeah, I'd be concerned if I were Jake Moody in a game, needing the upright to be kind to you to make one from 29 yards out. All right, a couple of other observations that don't necessarily fit good or bad. Number one is this, like Kaytron Allen. I mean, I liked Kaytron Allen a lot at Penn State. I think I'm going to like him in the pros. He got a lot of carries, 23 for 85, I think. 23 for 85, 3.7 yards. He dropped a pass early. Robert Henry Jr., honestly, to me, looked like a more natural zone runner. But Kaytron Allen's bigger, and he's got good vision, too. Don't get me wrong, and I like him as a runner. I will say this, that to me, when you get into these positions and you're talking about a guy that has perhaps real upside, draft status when you're picked in the 6th round shouldn't have anything to do with it. Like, that's not like, preferential treatment. I know they like Allen. I can't imagine that they don't like Henry Jr. I thought he was just okay. I saw a lot of people kind of saying, well, he bounced back and they had 2 outstanding performances at running back. I would say that they had 1 outstanding performance at running back in terms of just a player evaluation, and one that was solid after his first few carries and after a drop pass early. Again, with no game planning. Makes a difference. This was Dan Quinn. This is what I wanted to play this for you guys. Dan Quinn talking about his 2 coordinators on their first nights ever calling plays. Here's what he had to say about David Blau and Durante Jones.
Game run for your coordinators. How do you feel like they did?
You know what? I felt both guys felt really prepared going into it in terms of what it looks like. There'll be things to communicate differently, headsets, how does it go? But both of them really felt in control. I was listening a lot tonight just to see how the communication goes, call, how in on time and packages. So it's actually can be difficult in the preseason because you're not game planning and, okay, this is what I want to feature on this 3rd down. This is what they like to do. So I thought both guys, I'd give them high marks for starting us off. Good collaboration from the coaches too.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important. It's actually probably in some ways harder in the preseason. Of course, it's harder in the preseason. You've got 90 players, although 26 weren't dressed. You got many more players. You're trying to get everybody playing time. You don't have a game plan sheet necessarily that's pared down, or maybe it is pared down or 2 paired. I don't know what the play sheet looks like, but his point was a good one, which is, it can actually be difficult in preseason because you're not game planning. So it's not like, okay, it's 3rd and 5, and here are the plays that we had for 3rd and 5 against this opponent, because you don't even know who the opponent's going to be by the time you get to the 3rd drive of the first quarter or of the first half. But I didn't sense there was 1 timeout that they had to call defensively, and Durante Jones looked a little frustrated on the sideline, but got it together. And other than that, I guess we're really not going to know until the opener. And the idea that, you could get into some level of rhythm with your starting quarterback, the people you're going to be communicating with. I guess Sonny Styles was the player that Durante Jones was communicating with the other night, but it'll likely be Frankie Louvu in game number 1. I don't know. I'd still like to see us, the starters out there for a series or two Saturday against Detroit. Yeah, I had one other sort of observation. Oh, my other observation has to do with Miami. Malik Willis is an interesting deal because Malik Willis this time last year essentially was clinging to life in terms of being on an NFL roster as a quarterback. It certainly didn't look like he had any chance to be an NFL quarterback in Tennessee. And then when he got traded to Green Bay, and you got that first opportunity in 2024 when he came in for some games when Jordan Love was banged up, and he played pretty well. He looked the part. But again, it was a lot of running along with limited passing. They really dialed back the game plan. And then when he got that opportunity late in the season last year with Jordan Love out against Chicago in that Saturday night game, remember, right around the holidays, that was that a streaming game? I forget. But he was so outstanding in that game coming in for Love. And then his season finale was awesome. I mean, it was a kind of it was a loss to Baltimore, but I think he threw for like 288, rushed for 60, and all of a sudden he's the number 1 free agent quarterback in the offseason. Here's what I think. If you've been watching Malik Willis in Green Bay and now with Jeff Hafley, who comes from Green Bay, defensive side of the ball, with, by the way, Bobby Slowick, so a similar scheme in Miami that he was with under LaFleur in Green Bay. What you notice about Malik Willis is, number one, he's really calm. He's really poised. You saw that last year in that pressure game against Chicago, at Soldier Field, nationally televised Saturday night game. He was really, really poised, calm, doesn't seem to get rattled very easily. And then the other thing, and maybe this is just me, but going back to the end of last year and then looking at the other night, he's accurate. He's naturally accurate as a passer. And I don't think anybody would have said that, after the opportunities he got in Tennessee. But then again, we didn't really pay attention to those opportunities, and it wasn't a good football team. He was on a good football team last year. He's not going to be on a good football team this year, but he's an accurate thrower, and he is accurate from the pocket and on the move. I mean, can never count these quarterbacks out, man. Never. I mean, they develop at their own pace, and many times it takes a few years minimum, and in some cases it takes several years. But I think he actually looks like a guy that if you run the ball well, you can function with, more than function with. I'd love to know what any of the true quarterback guru pundits out there think of Malik Willis. I view him as an accurate thrower of the football. Very accurate. I could be wrong. But what he did in Green Bay last year when he got the opportunity and just in limited action the other night, he just throws a good ball. All right. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention, and I'll do that when we get back. Washington signed a running back this morning, even after the running backs were, part of the positives from the other night. But they signed a running back. I'll tell you who that is. And then it is your chance to weigh in at 301-230-0980. What stood out to you, both positively and negatively, from the game on Friday night, and anything else that you want to get to? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Do you guys remember Craig Reynolds? If the name rings a bell, he was actually signed as an undrafted free agent by our team back in May of 2019. And then he was activated to the main roster in the midseason and played occasionally on special teams the rest of the way. Well, he ended up in Detroit for a few years and played well in Detroit at times, had a 5-year career in Detroit, got cut midway or in the latter portions of the season last year. Running back, if you didn't know, and special teamer. And Washington, according to John Keim, they are signing running back Craig Reynolds to the squad. Did anybody get hurt at running back on Saturday night?
Jeremy McNichols suffered an injury.
Oh, well, McNichols didn't play. He had that injury before, right? Yeah, right. That would be the reason for that, I would assume. Because Reynolds is a special teamer, too. And Reynolds, by the way, can return kickoffs. Something that if Luke McCaffrey's not on the team, possibility, I guess, McNichols would have been one of those guys that could do it. Well, maybe Craig Reynolds is being signed specifically for that. That's possible because Reynolds has returned kicks during his career. Yeah. Okay. He returned kickoffs. I'm looking at it right now in the playoff game against Washington, the 45-31 game. He had 4 kickoff returns in that game for 93 yards, averaged 23.3 yards per return. So Blau knows him too, because Blau was obviously in Detroit before he came to Washington. All right, 301-230-0980. Oh, I wanted to mention one thing. During the break, I just looked up. Am I nuts, like looking at Malik Willis and seeing a guy that's a really accurate quarterback? And apparently the people have written about this, that his mechanics, the mechanics that Malik Willis had coming out of college were really, really raw and wrong in many ways. And he ended up working with, over and over again, private trainers, private quarterback gurus, really worked at it. And then obviously Matt LaFleur had some, direction and mentoring as well in Green Bay. And now everybody believes that he is a very accurate quarterback. It's funny because over the years, coaches have told me when we talk about like quarterback play, accuracy and throwing with anticipation is not something that if you don't have naturally, you can ever coach up to great. You can coach it up to okay, average, but you can't coach it up to great. I'm not suggesting Malik Willis has great accuracy, but I just remember some of those horrible games where he just couldn't throw. He couldn't he was just looking to run on every play when he was with Tennessee, and he got in a few games for Levis, I guess it was. I think it was. Was it Tannehill? Maybe it was Tannehill. But I thought the other night it's like, and then combining it with what we saw last year at the end of the year when he was playing for Jordan Love when Jordan Love was banged up, especially that Chicago game, that Saturday night, incredible overtime game. I thought he looked good. I think he's got great poise. I think he's got great belief. And this system will be perfect for him, especially if they can run the football. All right, I see everybody on hold. I do have to get one more break in here. Mark in Largo, Peter, Tom, Jamal, we've got a line open if you want to weigh in. Any thoughts from the preseason opener? Any big picture thoughts on where the team is right now? Phone lines are open at 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch this program on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. All right. What do you think off of Friday night if you watch the whole thing? 301-230-0980. You can weigh in on anything team-wise. Let me just say here on a Monday, and we'll certainly get into this later in the week, I'd really like to see – I'm not worried about, Marcus Mariota not being able to take snaps in the preseason. Doesn't bother me at all. I mean, as long as he's ready for the opener to back up Jaden, you need a strong backup quarterback. Hopefully they have one. I actually liked the guy that came in after Hartman. I thought he actually looked the part a little bit. Kaliakmanis, I think, is the way you pronounce his name.
Kaliakmanis.
Kaliakmanis, yeah. Kaliakmanis.
Yep. It's very Greek.
Kaliakmanis.
Very
Yeah,
Greek.
It is Greek. It's a good observation, Max. I thought, he looks big. He looks like he can make some reads and throws. He took a couple sacks, whatever. There's no game planning again. But I'd like to see the starters out there for at least a series or two against Detroit, both sides of the ball. I mean, you're not going to be – this game isn't until September 13th. I know there's one more joint practice with the Ravens, correct? There is that one more joint practice. But they don't have a joint practice this week. I think part of the reason you hold out a lot of the players that you held out on Friday night is that they, participated in a major way during the joint practice. All right, let's start with Tom in Columbia. Tom, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. I think I have a lot of red this JD5 situation of the numbers.
I'm sorry, you broke up at the beginning. Tom, say it again.
Okay, I was just saying I got some major red flags concerning this number controversy with JD5, and it has very little to do with the business transaction or the situation between legal entities. My greater concern stems from the fact that his mother, is it Regina Jackson? Regina is clearly in the driver's seat of this young man's life. And I think what that points to, there's rather vulgar terms you can use that he needs to untuck his balls and become a man. I think he's physically gifted, but she's clearly in the driver's seat. And I think until he can move her to the passenger seat, it's going to stunt his ability to be a leader of men. And the quarterback position in the NFL requires that direct leadership. And I think that systemically, there's an issue with many of these young athletes coming in where they're mama controlled. I mean, recently Steve Bisciotti made a comment post-year concerning his quarterback, and if you read between the lines, they asked him, is he the leader? And he said that he's got a say just like everybody else. But there's a growth issue, and to me, it's a huge red flag. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's actually really hard to disagree with that right now. It is a concern for me. Yes, it wasn't a concern prior to this. Now, did we know that she was over the top controlling and a lot of the situations that we've read about, dates that he's had where she's shown up, and who knows how much that's, exaggerated or even just fabricated. But the Netflix series, part of it is she actually has a personality, and all due respect to him, he really doesn't. I couldn't care less if my quarterback has a personality or not, but he's not made for that kind of intimate portrait of what Netflix does with quarterback. And by the way, it's not unusual for the parents to be involved on that show when the player doesn't have a wife or a significant other in their life. But I'll at this point, there is a sense of celebrity that I think she has. This is projecting. This is from afar. It's also based on conversations that I've had with various people. She's enamored with being a part of the celebrity that comes with her son's success. And by the way, I've heard very bright. She's obviously very bright. She's a certified agent now. But it's that LA thing where all of a sudden she's as much of a celebrity. And to your point, there's no indication at this point that he's having any trouble and that the players would view him any differently as a potential leader. My concern would be more that what happened late last week happens again. And this is where I think organizationally, or really he does. He's a grown man now at 25 years old. All right. Parents, I said this earlier, sports, the parents of the controlling sports parent, they create so many more problems than they solve. I've seen it so many times in my own personal experiences, even coaching youth sports. They create more problems than they solve. And she created a major problem the other day and a major distraction. Is it going to impact the way he plays or leads? No. But is the possibility of another distraction coming down the road if she sees herself as sort of a big part of the story? She's not. She's not a part of this story. He's a professional football player, and they have to make sure that she is not a part of the story anymore. She's his agent and mother. And no one would, say she can't continue to be obviously the mother and the agent as well. But she's not Drew Rosenhaus. She's not Mulugeta. She's not one of these power agents in sports at this point. And even they aren't sitting there doing what happened the other day, creating a major distraction. They've got too much experience. Look, somebody, hopefully, if she doesn't get the message, and I would assume she's bright enough to understand that this did not go well. This was a major self-inflicted, unforced public relations error that impacted and distracted not only her son, but the team. But in many ways, the worst part of this is really damaged him with the LSU fan base and the LSU program. That's a shame. Now, with respect to all the other complicated legal stuff, name, image, likeness, I'm not sitting here telling you that they don't have a case, but the way they went about presenting the case publicly, a couple of you tweeted me and said, this is media-driven. Media-driven? We didn't know anything about it until they went to the media and made it a media story. They took it to ESPN. The Daniels family took it to ESPN. They very likely, I would bet big money, leaked the cease and desist letter. And I think they did it with the sole purpose of there was a belief that he is already God's gift to football and that everybody would back him. LSU fans would back him. Redskin fans would back him. NFL media and fans would back him and would see how crazy it is that LSU gave out his number. No, they didn't see it that way. And most of us could have said to them before they did it, don't do this. Don't do this. This is not a good idea. And the timing of it is bad. So, yeah, I have – look, she's going to be at the center of it next offseason with a contract negotiation, which could be, based on how he plays this year, the largest contract any athlete's ever signed in the sport of football. Any football players ever signed. But hopefully this backfired to such a degree that she and anybody else, because it could have been others too, all right, we're going to back off. Our son's a professional football player. We're not employed by the team. We're not a part of the team. We are just fans of him and the team, and that's how we'll conduct ourselves moving forward. And, of course, she's got her obviously responsibility as an agent. Okay, let's go to Peter in Wilmington. Peter, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. As far as that last subject, I could care less about it. I just want them to win games. I know it could be a problem, but, I don't see that much. I don't see it that way. But that's just
it doesn't matter whether you see it that way or not. And, of course, the games matter, and they matter to me the most as well. But she damaged his reputation last week, or the people around him damaged his reputation to a degree with LSU that some people believe is unrecoverable. That's sad, and I feel for him if that's true. I don't believe that it's true. I think, time passes and things get fixed, especially if you're good-intentioned, and I believe he is. But go ahead. What do you got on the game?
Yeah. Okay, on the game, I see the center, the rookie, Matt Goldman. He looked really well. 6'4", 320 pounds or so. That's a nice pickup. He was running pretty good. So, But I really think this division is so close, and it may be the best division in the NFC, even though all 4 teams are a lot better. And a 10-win division leader a 10-win, 7 losses record might win the division. And so I think we're going to start off really slow because we're new here with everything. And we might have a shot at it if we can pick a couple games off because we don't look that organized right now. I'm worried about the first part of the year.
Okay. As it relates to Gulbin, my personal thought is it's really hard for me personally to evaluate offensive line play unless it's so obvious because you just don't know what their responsibilities are. And a big part of Matt Gulbin's responsibilities is as a communicator. And so that's really hard for us to know whether or not he did that well or not. But I thought physically, to your point, I thought physically he looked good. Thanks for the call, Peter. Let's go to our guy, Mark in Largo. Mark, what's up?
Hey, look, about the game. I just want to talk about the game and leave it at the game. Sonny did struggle out there. I was a little surprised, but I think Sonny will pick it up, and we're going to see it. I'm telling you, Kevin, it's going to be like with Jaden 2 years ago. First 2 games with Jaden, we were like, oh, did we draft the right guy? And when he went to Cincinnati, all hell broke loose. So he's going to have that game. And maybe in Philly, it's probably going to be in Dallas because he's going to be going up against Caleb. But I definitely would not shock me if it's going to be in Philly. I think he'll come back. I love how Henry played. I think Henry played, and I think that puts pressure on Luke McCaffrey because if you see, Luke had no catches on Friday, and that's the problem when you're in a wide receiver competition like you had. Everybody else had catches, and he didn't have it. And I know the president of the Luke McCaffrey fan club, Grant Paulson, and the VP, AWAD, Adam Epstein, and all these other people on YouTube who swear up and down Luke's going to make the team. You better rethink that if he's not producing in these games. Because if he's not producing in these games, there's a very good chance he'll be playing in a different uniform, probably in San Francisco. What's up, Kevin? How you doing, my 63-year-old older brother?
So let me just real quickly, let me just real quickly address the first part of your call because I know and I could sense that there's a little bit of concern in your voice that Sonny Styles didn't look like Lawrence Taylor in 2 series of the first preseason game of his rookie year. Can I just tell you to just step off the ledge? It's going to be okay. That there's nothing about Sonny Styles that should be taken seriously at all, other than what I mentioned, which is Kinlaw, Payne, Settle. They're going to have to do a good job up front. You don't want, with his body type at this point, you don't want him taking on double teams or big offensive linemen when he's going to be required to be involved in stopping the run. You got to be a good run-stopping team, and they're going to have their best run stoppers on the field against Philadelphia in the opener on early downs. I hope it's him, but I wouldn't be concerned about I know it seems like you're very, very concerned, and I don't think you should be.
Kevin, can I talk?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Right. The thing I loved about this was he wanted to go back in the game, and I think he realized he wants to get better and he wants to be great. And I think that's the thing I love about Sonny. You know, I heard this guy on the Junkie this morning trashing him, and I'm like, wow, you got all that from one game, and it wasn't even
not
really
one
bad.
game,
I mean,
2 series or 3 series. How many series did he play?
People can come up with certain situations after 2 series.
He played 2 series. I mean, seriously, did somebody actually call in and say that? Yeah.
Jesus Christ!
Our fan base, man. Some of the people in our fan base. You guys live on social media too much. Seriously, it's just not this time of year. It's really not a great guide to good sort of reactions and decision making. What else did you have, Mark? Because it's still your turn to talk.
Well, I do think Luke McCaffrey needs to play better the next 2 weeks. Okay. You can't have 0 catches.
You might be right. Yeah.
And truth be told, they can get anybody to do punt and kickoff returns. Anybody. So people sitting up here saying,
well, not anybody, but they have options.
Well,
they have options.
They have options. And I think Henry played well with I think puts pressure on Luke McCaffrey to perform as a receiver. When you got other people performing as receivers, you got to show up in these games, Luke. You know, your VP and your
I guarantee you how he showed up in practice and joint practices is just as important as how he showed up the other night to the coaches. They're not making the decision solely on how he's playing in these preseason games. In fact, it's probably a very little part of it's a small part of his grade. With that said, though, Mark, and we've been talking about this pretty much since training camp began or since the offseason began, the cut down to 7 receivers, if that's the number, is not going to be easy. That's for sure. And I will say this until it doesn't happen or it happens. Van Jefferson, they really would like to see on this football team. And if for some reason they had to turn him loose, it would really be painful for them, which is why I don't think they're going to do it. All right. Thank you, Mark in Largo. Let's go to Jamal in D.C. Jamal, go ahead.
What's going on, Kevin?
How are you, Jamal?
I'm good, man. Thanks for taking my call as always, man. Mark, man, I actually disagree with Mark. I do think Luke's going to make this team, and I think it's more so of AP trying to prove himself right with a pick, more so than him actually earning his way on here. Ben Sinnott, though, I do think we need. He might, because Yankoff and all them other guys, that tight end room is crazy. We already know we can pencil in.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I do think Ben Sinnott, he might need to be, look to keep his head on the swivel. But I enjoyed Hamilton, man. He stood out the most out of everybody. Goodness gracious, that guy was out there flying around.
He did last year too when he got opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I really enjoyed my guy Cadillac Manis, the quarterback. I like him, Kevin. He reminded me of your favorite Redskin ever, Kirk Cousins. He definitely reminded me of him. He looked like him a lot.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Yeah.
This guy, man, I liked him, man. He looked very poised. He looked like someone who played 40 plus games.
He did take sacks that seemed like I'll look it up real quickly. I'm going to guess it felt like it was over 60 yards worth of sacks. Hold on. I know that's an exaggeration. 2 sacks, 22 yards lost. So an average of 11 yards per sack lost. It's kind of upon the quarterback when possible. Sometimes it's not possible to minimize the yardage loss. Nothing derails a drive more than a sack does. Incompletions don't derail drives more. Obviously, turnovers do. But sacks, penalties don't even derail drives as much as sacks do, because with penalties, you get the down back in most cases. Jamal, thanks, though. Appreciate it. And I'm definitely with you on Hamilton. He really popped the other night, as he did at the end of the regular season last year. Nick in Virginia Beach. Nick, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, Kevin? What's up, Max?
Thank
you guys for taking my call. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm well. Thanks.
That's good. Yeah, no worries. So I have a couple thoughts. I want to go back to what Mark and Largo said just about Luke McCaffrey real fast. I do think Luke's going to make the team, but I really did think that Jalen Lane really made it look difficult for Luke to make the team. I thought he looked better at wide receiver, but that's not why I really called. I thought Hartman looked rough. I think if he wasn't JD5's boy, he wouldn't be on the team. I thought Rasul Douglas looked a bit slow, but most importantly, it wasn't even like the preseason game that I was paying attention to Friday. It was the fact that your best defensive player in Dorrance Armstrong from a year ago is suspended for the season opener against Philadelphia.
Oh,
and
right. You know what? I
forgot
to mention that. Yep.
I mean, that's a big, I know we upgraded hypothetically the defensive line with Owe and Jason, and I know Joseph's looked good, but I mean, we know Armstrong. We know he's a sure thing. He's a gamer. And against a division opponent in week 1 on the road at the link, that's a hurtful loss, man. That's a hurtful loss. He's going to be missed in those pass rush situations, especially when Hurts is learning a new offense under Sean Mannion.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, hold on. I'm just looking for my fault. I'm looking for the story from Friday because it happened Friday after the show, and I had it on my list to mention. and I just didn't mention it yet. For those that didn't see it and weren't paying attention necessarily a lot to the preseason game, I get a lot. Yeah. So Dorrance Armstrong suspended for the first game of the regular season against Philadelphia. And it's a violation of the NFL's personal conduct policy. He's allowed to participate in all preseason activities, including games. The suspension will begin on August 30th. He'll be eligible again on September 14th.
Nikki Javala
what
said,
did he do?
So Nikki Javala, so that's the big question that everybody was asking. So Nikki tweeted shortly after that this was announced that public records show Dorrance Armstrong was arrested May 10th, 2025 in Frisco, Texas on misdemeanor charges of assault, causing bodily injury, and resisting arrest. Deferred adjudication for both. That's the tweet.
Okay. All right. So, look, he's not ready, really. I mean, he's back at practice. I don't know how much he was going to play in these preseason games, given that he's coming off, obviously, the serious injury. It'd be nice to have him in the opener, but now that we know he's not in the opener, you can pretty much, I think, pencil in Chason and Oweh as your outside edge rushers. Now, how they'll line up and pre-snap, and I'm telling you, I've said this a couple times. I think I cannot wait to see what the defense looks like more than the offense, because it's so new with so many new players and a new coordinator. What's it really going to look like against Philadelphia? Who's going to be on the field as early down, hopefully run stoppers? Who's going to be on the field when there's an obvious second long or third and long pass situation? It really, given the players that were held out of the game, all right, let's go through that list. Where is that list? I mean, the fact that Reeves and Cross were held out of the game, I'm going to do this when we come back. You know, what did we learn by the players who sat? Because I do think that there's at least at one position something meaningful to take away. So I'll get to that when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. So 26 players didn't play on Friday night against Miami. What can we learn from that list? Sometimes you can learn something about who they're holding back. I mean, sometimes it just means those were the players that played the most and they didn't need to see any more of after the joint practice. But if they played the most and they were sort of expected starters or on the verge of being an expected starter, it sort of is confirmation that they are. As an example, 2 safeties were kept out of the game on Friday night, both of whom are healthy, Nick Cross and Jeremy Reeves. I think we start right there because I do think that, heading into this offseason, there was a belief when they signed Nick Cross, okay, he might start. No, he is going to start. And that the other starter at safety would more likely be Will Harris. Jeremy Reeves was kept out of the game. Will Harris was in the game. Jeremy Reeves, Steve Suter, who broke down film for me all last year and is exceptional at doing it. There were 3 players that he absolutely fell in love with, having not watched Washington at all in the preseason or in previous years that much. He fell in love with Jacob Martin early on. He said, this guy's just a baller. Like, you've got to re-sign him if he's going to be a free agent. He didn't re-sign here. He signed in Tennessee. Chris Paul, early on when he got the opportunity to step in for Coleman, he said immediately, whenever Coleman's ready health-wise, he's not getting his job back. Chris Paul's just flat out with what they're trying to do, really good and better. Loved Chris Paul. And then he really loved Jeremy Reeves all season long. He goes, how do you keep 39 off the field? Like, he's one of your best defensive players. How are you possibly just going to have him play teams and a few defensive snaps? Well, guess what? He's your starting free safety. Now, free safety, strong safety, who's in the box, who isn't. There's versatility there, certainly with Cross. But the fact that both Reeves, it's not a shocker because I think we've seen this coming, but it's confirmation. It's confirmation that Cross and Reeves are going to be your 2 safeties when the season opens. The 3 corners held out were Amos because he's coming off injury, but also Sandra Still and Amik Robertson. So I think we've expected all 3 of them. Who knows what Amos's situation will be when we get to the opener, but all the other corners played. Sonny Styles and Leo Chenal being on the field, I think may have been a little bit of a surprise, whereas Frankie Louvu wasn't. And then your edges, Chason and Owe, didn't play. Wise is still on the PUP list. Armstrong isn't ready to play. Omenihu didn't play. Omenihu can be an inside terror as a pass rusher, I think, this year for them, situationally. Settle, has the calf injury. No Kinlaw, no Payne. That's not a surprise. O-line wise, the right side didn't play. Connerly Jr. and Cosme, but we did see Paul and Brandon Coleman play. No center with now Allegretti out in terms of your starting center, projected starting center. Bates is hurt, but no Okonkwo, no Diggs, no McLaurin, no White or Merritt. Like those are your 2 backs. Those are your top 2 backs, clearly. Krosky, Merritt, and Rashad White. And Jeremy Nichols is dealing with a quad injury, which is probably why they signed Craig Reynolds today. But I think, in terms of where we were, say, even a month ago, I think it's probably a surprise that Jeremy Reeves is going to be a starting safety with Nick Cross back there with him. Reeves more of the free, I would imagine, more often. But again, there's versatility in those 2. They really raved about Will Harris's loss. Remember, they lost him week 2 or week 3 last year. And they really talked about how, some of the communication stuff was because Will Harris wasn't out there. I remember Suter pointing out that some of the communication stuff was a problem in the Green Bay game with him in there. Yeah. Will any of these players play on Saturday against Detroit? Who knows for sure? Who knows? Also, by the way, the team put out its first, sort of unofficial depth chart. They're required to do that the day before or the day of the preseason game. And yeah, the starting safeties are Cross and Reeves, with the backups Harris and Martin, and then you've got guys like Owens and Butler, back there. The corners are showing Douglas Hamilton Sr. and Fabian Moreau, all of whom played the other night, as your backup corners. And then in terms of your linebackers, and there are 4 of them, it's Owe, Styles, Luvu, and Chason. Styles and Luvu inside, Chason and Owe outside. And then Settle Jr. is showing as your starting nose tackle, with Payne and Kinlaw up front with him. Wise, Newton, and Omenihu afterwards. Now, was Omenihu hurt? I'm just curious. I don't think he was. I didn't read that Omenihu was hurt. So holding him out is an interesting move because he wasn't listed as a starter. He is a high motor, get after the quarterback, try to make some plays guy. Defensively, they got to be better, right? No chance they could be anywhere near what they were last year. No chance. Hit the what do you got sounder for me. So I talked about Russell Westbrook the other day and my appreciation for his career. He announced his retirement after 18 seasons the other day. He will be an absolute lock, first ballot Hall of Famer. I just always loved Russell Westbrook. And I said, I don't know of any team sport athlete that ever tried as hard and never took a night off, never took a minute off. I don't think there's ever been a player in team sports that had a higher motor than Russell Westbrook. My guy Ivan in Florida said, heard your segment regarding Russell Westbrook. Can't believe the whiff you made. You said more or less that you couldn't think of anybody that played with the fierceness of Westbrook. You forgot your colleague and former skin, B. Mitch. Major duh. You're right, Ivan. B. Mitch is in that category. I mean, Brian played every play as if it was going to be his last, and if life itself depended on it. He did. I mean, no doubt. I mean, I can think of some others for sure, like Steve Smith Sr. Remember how he played as a receiver in the NFL? He and B. Mitch had a lot of similarities in the way they played. But the other part of this, what do you got, is that Mark Stein, who's covered the NBA for years, reported over the weekend that Russell Westbrook actually considered before retiring, but ended up declining an offer made by the Wizards. League sources told Stein that the Wizards made a 2-year offer for Russell Westbrook at 37 years old. Westbrook ended those negotiations either due to dissatisfaction over the financial terms of the contract or the role he was being asked to play. Obviously he would have been a backup, but he's been a backup in recent years. He would have been a backup to Trae Young, at a minimum. I would bet you any amount of money what the Wizards wanted to get out of Russell Westbrook was, yes, some play, but also some mentorship. Russell Westbrook, again, I know this was surprising to me when he was here in Washington, when the people in that organization described him as one of the most respected players in that locker room and one of the best mentors for young players that had ever been in the organization. Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think that Bub Carrington's the backup for Trae Young, and if you throw Russell Westbrook out there now, Bub Carrington's, not really playing. I'm kind of glad that they didn't get a deal done with Westbrook, as much as I've loved him over the years. He's a lot, like, on the floor. He plays 1,000 miles per hour, and I could see the Wizards playing with great pace, especially off of their defense, and being able to run off of their defense with Sarr and with Davis. Fingers crossed that he's out there. Not with Trae Young's defense, understood, with Koulibaly out there. But they should be able to turn defense into offense with several of the players that they'll have out on the floor. It would have been interesting, but I'm kind of glad it didn't happen. I think it's time for Westbrook to hang it up. But yeah, the Wizards offered him a 2-year deal. But more than maybe the money, it may have been the role. All right. When we come back, how about just the rest of the weekend around the NFL and what happened with Giants starting quarterback Jackson Dart? We'll get to that and more. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, the team980.com. Don't forget, that is, we are free, we are live, we are watchable on the Team 980's YouTube channel, and all of our training camp and preseason coverage here on the Team 980 is presented by Xfinity. Score the most reliable Wi-Fi, one price, 5 years, guaranteed. Xfinity, imagine that. Von Miller had 9 sacks here last year. He just signed with Dallas. 1-year deal to play with the Cowboys. Von Miller, who's been out there all during the offseason, signs a 1-year deal to join the Cowboys. Look, the Cowboys are in a situation where they have certainly attempted to upgrade their defense, adding Rashawn Gary, Caleb Downs being drafted. By the way, he played part of series number 1, and that was it. Couple of other guys, and now adding Von Miller. Von Miller, 9 sacks in just 250 snaps last year, which is a pretty decent rate. The bottom line is the Cowboys, unlike Washington last year, they have the ability to score and potentially have better situations for the defense to enter the game in, like actually facing teams that need to throw the football, maybe. I don't think he's done at 37 years old. I definitely don't think he is done. I thought we saw some moments from him. It's just the team was terrible, and everything about them defensively reeked. But if you forgot, he had 9 sacks in all 17 games on just 250 snaps. I mean, he was a pure specialist, that is for sure. Longtime NFL safety Jamal Adams, done for the season in Minnesota. I didn't even know where he was, but a knee injury for Jamal Adams in the preseason game that Minnesota had with the Giants on Saturday. Kevin O'Connell said a crushing blow for this year's Minnesota defense, which is expected to be very, very good. Jackson Dart and the New York Giants played their preseason game against those Vikings on Saturday. Jackson Dart took a big hit on clearly a whiff of a pass pro by Tyrone Tracy in the backfield. He took a hit, and guess where he ended up? The Blue Tent, a place that he visited more often than any other quarterback in the league last year as a rookie. And he was cleared, and he came back into the game and was 3 of 4 and threw a touchdown pass. But he took a big shot. It wasn't to the head area, but he went down, and immediately they called down and said Blue Tent because he stayed down. He stayed down for a count or two and was slow to get up. I'm going to tell you this. You're going to hear what Jackson Dart said. Do you have that sound for me, Max?
I do.
Okay, I want you to play. This was Jackson Dart after going into the Blue Tent again after seeing the Blue Tent many times last year.
Unfolded from the hit to the 10 to the touchdown pass.
Yeah, thought it was a good drive by the offense just being resilient. It's big by even Jamison Motor just making a play to get us down there, and us being able to have a big play in the red zone on the scramble drill, and Malachi just showing what he's been consistently showing all through camp to practices of continue to play along with the play, and then being able to make a contested catch. So I was really proud of the protection up front, the resiliency of the whole drive, and us ending in the score, which I thought was really cool. As far as the Blue Tent, I really respect the rules and the thought behind NFL has of keeping players healthy and reviewing things, but at the same time, I'm still puzzled by it just feeling like every time that I get hit, I find my way in there, which at times I still try to wrap my head around. But that's all that I'm going to say about that situation. I'm really happy with how the drive ended.
This is an interesting situation. I think football fans, for the most part, understand that they are trying to protect these players and that there is, a medical monitor in these games for concussions. It's not just quarterback. They can buzz down to the referee and say, number 75, the offensive lineman has got, dinged up. He had a head stuff and he's kind of wandering around. He's off. He's got to go to the Blue Tent. With Dart, because it happened so much during his rookie year, over and over, again, he was in the blue tent. I think personally he takes way too many hits. I don't think the hit the other night was his fault, but I'm not a massive fan of Dart. I think he is a bit of a Lane Kiffin creation. We'll find out over the years to come. But, if you're Jackson Dart, you're going to be viewed differently by that medical monitor. That was not a hit to the head. It was a big hit, and he went down and he stayed down for, a beat or two. If you don't want to end up in the blue tent, if you don't get hit in your head, you better bounce up quickly if you're Jackson Dart, because they're looking for it now. And I understand what he's saying. Unfortunately, their job is to protect players and to make sure they're not playing in the game if there's a potential head injury. Quarterbacks get hit. They get hit hard. I mean, the hit that he took, if you've seen it, if that is, let's just say, Fernando Mendoza. Now, he's a bigger dude. Okay, I understand that. But there's no real, experience with Fernando Mendoza as an NFL quarterback. If that happened to him the other night when they faced Arizona, he's not coming out of the game into the blue tent. That wasn't a hit to the head. It didn't look it looked fast and it looked like a big hit, but it looked like if you're a bigger dude and you bounce up even after a count of 1 or 2 with no history, you're probably not going to the blue tent. Jackson Dart has a point to a certain degree, but they're not going to change, nor should they. I'm not advocating that they should. And in a regular season game, if he's in the blue tent at a crucial point in the game, it could be very costly. And I'm saying in the blue tent unnecessarily. If they're erring so much on the side of caution with him that he's in the blue tent because he got hit, which quarterbacks get hit on a lot of dropbacks, even after they've thrown the football, and he's missing key plays, he's going to have to make the point of, if I didn't get hit in my head, if I'm fine, I can't be on the ground. I got to pop right back up as if I'm fine, to totally take out of the mind of the medical, monitor that, okay, he bounced right back up. He must be okay. Now, if he gets hit in the head after the multiple concussions last year, if the multiple times he was in the blue tent, I think if you hit him anywhere near the head, he's out for a play or two. He's in the blue tent. By the way, the Giants, if you were wondering, ended up playing Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, didn't we look this up recently? Is he the number? No, Flacco's number 1, right? Flacco's the number 1 backup in the league by most rankings. Is Winston too? Winston was like 8 of 9 and apparently just looked great. He always looks great in these situations. But I don't care what anybody says about Jameis Winston. That dude can flat out play quarterback and can really throw the football. The problem, of course, over the course of his career is he tends to throw it to the other team too many times during the course of a season if he is the starter. What else did I have? Jeremiah Love the other night in his rookie debut for the Cardinals. This was on Thursday night. I think we just missed this story from the game that popped up over the weekend. He's got a high ankle sprain. In that game, they ran him 11 times for 58 yards. They threw the ball to him 3 times for 14 yards on 23 snaps. So he was, for a preseason player, a high-volume player and a highly targeted player in terms of handing him the football and then throwing it to him. What are they thinking? What are they doing? Why would they do that? I mean, they've got Tyler Algier in that backfield as well. You don't need to see running backs at this point more often than not. I'm sure there was excitement over seeing Jeremiah Love, the number 3 pick in the draft, but now he's got a high ankle sprain and he could be in doubt. High ankle sprains, I'm sure many of you know this, sometimes are just as long as broken ankles, depending on how bad the high ankle sprain is. Starting quarterbacks have played, among them Josh Allen, Bryce Young, Kyler Murray, Jackson Dart. How about the Baltimore Eagles game from over the weekend? Did you see this? The Eagles didn't play their starters in the preseason game at all. But Baltimore beat Philadelphia 24-7. They ran 76 offensive plays to the Eagles 40, 440 yards to the Eagles 159, 31 first downs for the Ravens to the Eagles 6. The Eagles throw in for good measure 0 for 9 on third down and 10 penalties for 96 yards. It's the preseason. You're not playing your starters. You're not game planning. All of that holds true for the Eagles. But, man, you'd like to show a little bit better with your backups and the backups to the backups, which apparently were not very good the other night in Baltimore in that game. All right, Ben Standig will join us next. All right, Ben Standig's with us as he is every Monday and Friday. He is our team insider. Follow him on X at Ben Standig and subscribe to Last Man Standing, his Substack, in which he covers this team as well as anybody else does. You wrote in your column this morning in the opening line, the first preseason game offered some answers. The days since have created a few more questions. Let's start with the answers. What answers from Friday night's game against Miami?
Oh, I mean, it's like small little answers more than like, big ones, especially since most of the guys weren't playing. I mean, we did get a couple things like it had looked like Jeremy Reeves was in line to be first team safety, and then he doesn't have to play in the game. They rest him with the other main guys and whereas Quan Martin and Will Harris played more snaps than any safeties who played in the game. So, a little there in terms of like the current depth chart. Look,
yeah, Cross and Reeves are the starters, right?
I mean, that's certainly the way it looks. Like I said, it had looked that way for a week or so in camp, but you never know. And this was a sign in that regard. We'd even say maybe, it's been we've talked a lot about Luvu being the green dot guy. It looked like, and then you have Styles and Chenal both playing in this game. Not saying that's they're obviously going to play, but that whole dynamic is like who's going to play more, or how are they going to just split? I mean, it's looking more and more like that may be the case. And then you just have some individual performances. Katron Allen, like you can look at it half glass full, half glass empty, depending on where you want to emphasize it. But there was a stat I saw. I think Warren Sharp had it that of his 23 carries, 0 of them went for negative yards. That says something about the style of the player, and it was something that was recognized like coming into the draft that he's a fall forward kind of a guy, makes something even when nothing's there. And I think that's for a guy that like what's his role? Is it going to be the short yardage kind of guy maybe with Bill and Rashad White? Well, again maybe we can nitpick on some things here and there, but that type of player showed up against the Dolphins. So I think some subtle things like that kind of stood out.
All right. What you wrote, what questions have the days since created?
Well, I mean, the Mariota one is, the most obvious one. The medical people out there, by that I mean, people who don't have degrees, medical degrees, were telling me that
the internet.
Yeah, and some other people like the sprained MCL is not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, I mean, certainly it's better than what could have been the alternatives, and that he could be back. Quinn already said he's going to be out for preseason. We didn't technically ask if he's going to practice, but that's we can get to that. But like if he, I mean, if he's out at all, like if we get to week 1 and it's still iffy. I mean, what do? They don't have a guy right now who you would feel remotely comfortable. I'm getting a lot of people, because I wrote about the Mariota thing, I'm getting people going, oh, come on, you're making a big deal about this. Nobody has a QB3, blah, blah, blah. There's a massive difference in QB3. You can have a guy like, say, Josh Johnson or a Driscoll, and nobody would say, well, if that's your quarterback for 17 weeks, you're good. But if we're just talking a game or two, right, can that person be functional? Can that person allow the other playmakers to do what they do, allow the offensive coordinator to call a game plan in which at least the basics can be executed and you're not asking him to do too much? The problem with having a 7th-round rookie in Sam Hartman is there's no sense that they could even do that. And that's the difference between having a third stringer who's at least functional versus no idea. I mean, and I think that's where it's a little bit nervous right now. Again, especially when even if it's not for that reason, the starting quarterback has missed a lot of games. So, the backup quarterback, I mean, Josh Johnson was the number 2 at point for a lot of last year. Let's not forget, at the end of the year, they brought in Jeff Driscoll to be his backup because they didn't trust Sam Hartman to do that. So, it just feels like you're putting yourself at a bit of a risk here all along. And now they're saying they're not even going to bring in another quarterback. Again, I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but to dismiss the third stringer as irrelevant because the season's over. The season's over if that guy has to play the season. He's not over if he needs to play 1 or 2 games, and they need somebody functional for that.
Right. Like my immediate reaction when you started to talk, I'm like, look, if the backup quarterback's got to play like he did last year, we're doomed. The season's over. Let's move on to 27. That would really suck, by the way. But to your point, Marcus Mariota is very capable of coming in for a 2-week period and keeping the trains on time, keeping them running and giving you a chance in the same way that, Joe Flacco gave Cincinnati a chance. Of course, he had to do it for a much longer period of time and with a terrible defense last year as Burrow was getting healthy, but they were actually in it with him. That's what you have to have. Marcus Mariota is not starting 17 games and you're going to end up, vying for a playoff spot. But if he only has to start 1 in October and 1 in early December in a big spot, you have to have somebody like him versus a Sam Hartman. There's a big difference, major difference.
Yeah, I mean, again, go back to 2020 when, they went through, Alex Smith was there, got hurt, and Dwayne Haskins and Kyle Allen, and they get to the end, and Alex Smith can't go, and they're looking at Steven Montez, who had been there all year, right. and Ron Rivera said his eyes got too big. They were like, all right, so what do we do now? And they went and, they brought in Heineke. And, say whatever you want about Heineke. He was a gamer. He could do
right.
that. So that's all I'm saying. It's not, you gotta play this stuff all the way out. I mean, and again, it's no different to me than last year with the wide receiver room. It's like, really, this is the plan when you have this huge risk at receiver in terms of the injuries and the holdout, and they went in with the depth that was obviously not satisfactory, and then obviously it played out the way that it did. So again, the QB3 is not going. The season's not going to hinge on that. But if you don't have a guy that can at least be functional, then you probably have no chance.
That was such a great pull, Steven Montez, because he literally didn't he get into a game and he was clearly petrified. Or Rivera thought that he could play, but he was one of those guys when you actually had to do it in the game. Didn't quite look the part.
Yeah.
Did he play in a game?
I don't think I don't think so. But it was positioned that he was going to, again, just based on the fact that he'd been there all year. Which by the way brings up to just a different point since we're here. Like, this is no disrespect to Sam Hartman. The guy seems like a really nice guy. He, clearly has a good feel for football. We can see that even when he's playing. But like it just doesn't seem like they think he's a legit quarterback, and the eye test kind of backs that up.
Well, what does Regina think?
Wow, I don't know what to tell you on that one. But I mean, this is sort of like I was just surprised when they brought him.
People, I'm kidding.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just surprised, like when they brought him back. I'm like, okay, like they drafted a kid in the 7th round, and it's like, well, what is the point if it's just a camp body? Even still, like, I don't know. It's like the odd choice to me of keeping him, unless it's for other reasons. Then it's just like, well, then what was the point? Now you're in this position where Dan Quinn's saying they're probably not going to bring anybody else in. So does that mean for the rest of camp and preseason, the people you have to evaluate at receiver or anywhere else are now going to be having to do that with a 7th round rookie and a guy in his 3rd year who you have already kind of said you don't think should be playing? That doesn't seem like a great spot to be in, but it is what it is.
Do you think there's a chance that Jaden and the offensive starters and some of the defensive starters will play Saturday against Detroit? We know that it won't likely happen against Baltimore, but could it happen Saturday against the Lions or not?
I mean, like, all things being equal, I would say, you should play some of these guys. But now that Mariota is hurt, and again, you can tell me that he'll be back in 2 weeks and it won't be a big deal. That's cool. But as of now, he's hurt, and I don't think I'd play him. I think the risk is now exponentially greater knowing that Mariota's out. Again, maybe he'll be ready for week 1. I'm not a doctor. I don't know.
I don't think you can operate like that. I don't think you can. I think if your backup quarterback is out for the rest of the preseason, that can't if your starting quarterback, if you think he needs work or that the offense needs work with the new offensive coordinator, I don't think you can operate on that level of fear.
Again, if you had a 3rd stringer that you could remotely play, I might agree. But at the moment, it's just the extreme is so nuts that I don't know. You could, I mean, again, even if it was Josh Johnson, who none of us are saying is a guy you'd be comfortable with going, but at least you could play Josh Johnson for a game or two. That's all I'm saying. Like, I don't know how you would do this otherwise, but sure. I mean, to the larger point, everybody needs work. It isn't just the quarterback. You need to get Stephon Diggs on time. You need to get the offensive line. You know, if Allegretti's actually going to be back, you know, you got to get rhythm with him and the quarterback, and so on and so on. So there's more to it than just the quarterback. I just, you know, look, again, if they're not bringing anybody else in, then they clearly don't have the same worries that I would. But that's me from the outside. You know, we'll see.
Steven Montez is available if you're curious. He hasn't played football since 2024. He played with the Edmonton Elks. That's not the CFL team. I'm pretty sure the Edmonton team in the CFL are the Eskimos, I think. But he didn't get many opportunities after playing here. All right. Of the players that really helped themselves on Friday night with respect to making the roster or being seriously considered for the practice squad, who was on that list for you?
Well, I mean, I think the two running backs, like I said before with Kaytron Allen, like at least you saw the rationale behind what he could potentially do for them. So, you know, I think he's probably already in a decent position to make the team, especially now with McNichols banged up. But I think that just at least helps solidify that. And then if you're talking practice squad, you know, Robert Henry shows that he can be a guy that can make plays in space. And, you know, again, we go through this every single year. There's a guy or two as a skill player who you see in preseason, you're like, oh my Lord, this guy's going straight to Canton. And then, you know, it doesn't always play out that way. But, you know, you need guys who can, you know, potentially help and make plays in certain ways. And, you know, like in the example of, say, I'm not saying they're the exact same type of guy, but in the knock on wood example that Bill were to miss any time, you know, maybe this guy, Henry, could be a guy that could come in and give you some of that, you know, elusiveness and wiggle and whatever that maybe you wouldn't get from some others. So, yeah, I mean, that's as a pure practice squad guy, he looked fun for sure. I mean, I think, you know, the linebacker situation is interesting. Ali Cahoe and Kane Medrano are not the same type of guy in terms of the positions that they play, but it was
Medrano nearly had a pick six. I mean, it was right in his hands.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like, you know, Cahoe made this team last year kind of out of nowhere. And, you know, they were using him in that green dot kind of role. Medrano is more of the speed special teams kind of a guy. So, you know, I think that's an interesting dynamic. I mean, do either of them make the team, or if so, which one? You know, that could signal, you know, depending on what they think they need more of, you know, that could be interesting. And I think also, like, I think Tyler Owens was interesting to me. Again, it's hard to get completely worked up over snaps in preseason because you don't always know what the priorities were. But the fact that, you know, he was a guy like on the very first play, right? He was on the very first play. He like essentially play outside corner to a degree, and like, or at least he moved outside and defended the receiver out there. He played fewer snaps than Harris and Martin, and I say that in a positive way for Owens, as if they were like, well, maybe we don't need to see him as much. He played more special team snaps than anybody on the team last year. We already know that Ballor's out. Jeremy Reeves is probably going to play less, right? He can't play more if he's going to play a lot of safety. And so Tyler Owens, you know, I've generally thought he would make the team, in part because he's just got these incredible athletic and physical dimensions that they'd want to, you know, keep playing with. But, you know, when you see how they're using him and potentially even prioritizing him over Harris and Martin, then that's, you know, that's interesting just in terms of both making the team and also maybe how they see him possibly fitting in the rotation.
Yeah, back to the running backs. I mean, I think it's really hard. I mean, because we can go down the list, the Marcus Masons and, you know, just the running backs, Mac Brown, Lake Seastrunk, like just thinking about running backs that weren't. But the thing that stood out to me is just in sort of a zone run scheme, he's totally built for it. He's got really good patience, really good, excellent vision, good burst. He actually looks more natural as a zone runner than Kaytron Allen does. But, you know, they're learning a lot about these guys in practices, joint practices, as much as they are in the games. But I would think that that's a guy that certainly helped himself. I just don't know where the room would be unless you decided that Katron Allen is a 6th-round pick. You liked Henry's upside more.
Yeah, I mean, even Quinn said McNichols could be out a few weeks. We'll see what that means in terms of the season. But let's just say if he was out even longer, and you wanted a 4th back, would you go with Henry? Would you go with Jerome Ford, who's a guy that's played in the league a little bit, can do more things? You ready to go? That type of thing. That would be an interesting dynamic. But yeah, we're ways off. And I would also say, the conversation we always have about running back is not that they're a dime a dozen, but that you can always typically find somebody there. Now, I think it's smart for teams around the league to prioritize paying some of the better guys, your Barkleys and your Gibbs, if that makes sense. But it's still the same general idea, and this is an example of that. He looks like a guy that could play, that if you had to throw him in, could probably give you at least something, which is not the case at other positions. But at the same time, don't overvalue it, because there's a lot. We just said you can find running backs kind of here, there, and everywhere. And that's why, most camps probably have a guy like him who you're like, ooh, this is interesting. But that's the point of the running back position. There's just a lot of guys who can do this.
By the way, I thought Antonio Hamilton Sr., and I went back and looked at my kind of recap for the Giants game at the end of the year, and he played very well in that game. He's with some of their special teams losses, like a guy like Nick Bellore, who was arguably their best coverage guy on teams. I have a feeling they brought him back, and now because of special teams alone, he's going to make this football team.
That's the thing. Special teams is obviously such a key element. When you look at these last few spots, he did have some good highlights, I thought, as a special teams guy in the game. And like you said, late last season, he was standing out a little bit at corner, but special teams as well. And that would be his entree into making the team. Now the fact that Trey Amos is still out and we don't quite know his deal, now keeping a 5th cornerback seems more logical in general. So yeah, it would just come down to how do you do that? Where else are you removing away a player from another spot? But certainly Hamilton looks like that guy. And this is also the dynamic of he's, over 30. He was a guy they picked up in camp last year, in the middle of camp. Can you put him to the practice squad and get him there, and then you elevate him the first week or two if you need to. Those types of things they're going to have to figure out, in terms of who they can expose or not. But certainly Hamilton looks like a guy that could play. And also, Fabian Moreau, he's a guy that was with Durante Jones in Minnesota.
Right.
He's a completely solid vet. He was playing, I want to say he was playing ahead of Hamilton, at least in this game. And it felt like even in some practices that's been the case. But, again, it might just depend if it's a choice, what they prioritize more, perhaps the cornerback part or the special teams part.
Ben Standig joining us. Jake Moody hitting a 29-yarder off the right upright is not good for him. That matters in this kicking thing. And Stevens already had sort of a lead. I don't know. Stevens actually, I don't know if you noticed, the play was whistled dead, but he actually missed an extra point before the play was whistled dead. He went through with the kick and pushed it to the right. Ended up making it on the retry. Is it Stevens and his job to lose at this point?
I mean, I would think so. Even going back to the beginning of this, it felt like as long as they weren't feeling nervous about a rookie, that Ty would go to the guy with the bigger leg and therefore more potential. And the fact that Stevens has also been more accurate to boot in camp, I think would suggest that it's his job to lose. Look, we'll see what happens. I'd be curious to see if next game they're like, okay, kid, you go do everything, right? And we'll see where we're at. And if he does it, then we're nothing else to see here. And if he doesn't, then then maybe it's still game on. But it looks to me like Stevens is the guy. And again, it's that big leg aspect of it. I think we're all going to be, you always want the offense to move down the field as much as possible. But I think some of us sickos are going to be like, it's okay. Maybe you stall at the 50. Let's let them kick one from 60 plus.
Yeah,
and
well,
see
there
what
was an
happens.
opportunity in the game the other night. Hold on, I wrote this down on my notes.
Yeah, I think I saw somebody say he could have kicked like a 61-yarder.
It was. I think
punted.
it was a 60. I think it was a 61-yarder. Yeah, because the ball was at the 40. I think it was a 62-yarder. The ball was at the 45. I think I wrote down. When was that? When did they punt?
I think it was like the first drive.
I'll find it. Whatever. Yeah, I would like to see that for sure.
Yeah,
I'd like to see that.
I think it was the first quarter, and I think in that case, Quinn wants to.
Yeah, they were at the Miami 44. They were at the Miami 44. So 7. That would have been a 61-yarder, 61-yard field goal. First drive of the game, offensive drive of the game. Yeah, and they punted.
Right. So I mean,
with their backup punter.
Right. I mean, I'm just guessing that Quinn was like, "Hey,
he didn't want that to be his first kick."
Well, not just that, but also like you want to have the defense also. It's not just him. You want to have the defense do what they need to do. So give them the longer field to play with. Obviously, that first drive wasn't great defensively anyway. So give them the opportunity to do what they do. So obviously, it's always a fun thing to do in the right before the halftime, or in this case, in the second half when it's a preseason game. But we'll see. It won't surprise me if we see him launch one of those here in preseason if the situation works out. But that one in the first quarter just probably wasn't exactly right.
All right. We'll end on this because we've talked a little bit about this today because we talked about it on Thursday and Friday. You titled the section in your Substack column this morning, Memeified. The sports meme industrial complex worked overtime this weekend to capitalize on the drama involving Jaden Daniels and LSU. I really hope that the people around him understand what they did and don't do that again. Do you think that that's being reinforced somewhere?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, to do this, look, if I think we discussed this the other day, there could be something interesting in terms of the NIL aspect of it. Why are the guys who are no longer playing still having their name and likeness being used when they're presumably not getting
separate
any money?
issue from how bad of a PR blunder this was.
Yeah. No, I think so. That part was real, but the fact that they then decided to make this more public by going to ESPN, by saying, according to ESPN, that a Daniel spokesman said this was about the number 5 jersey at LSU. Like, these are the types of things that just seem to be a complete own goal. So then when Jaden Daniels comes out later and says, it says that hopefully it's a private matter. Well, I mean, the one hand's not talking.
When your people went to ESPN and more likely than not, I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing they leaked the cease and desist, thinking that the world would back God's gift to football. Jaden Daniels. That can be the only thing they thought they could achieve, is that everybody would come out and back them. LSU, Washington fans, football media. I mean, anybody with a brain in their head, with any experience, could have said, don't do this. It's not going to go the way you thought. My question is, I think he'll recover from this. Football-wise here, it's fine, as long as he plays well. But we can't have this again with the people around him. They've got to take a major step or 7 backwards out of this. I would hope that they got the message.
Well, that's the question. The people that decided to do this in the first place, do they understand the lessons here? Now, as we've all know, having walked through life in various ways, some people like, oh, okay, that just was a bad choice, and other people don't see it that way at all, whether they're ignorant or arrogant or whatever, and they just think, no, we're doing the right thing here. Don't worry about it. That'll be the question. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to affect him here at all. But I do think like you said, this was sort of the get out of jail free card on this kind of front. And again, it's like, okay, but man, like now you guys this is a real thing we're doing here. Okay. So I do think it's an important deal. What did you make of Dan Quinn saying he really hasn't been paying attention to it? I mean, I get that.
I haven't played that sound. Max said he had it. Max, do you have that? Will you play it for me real quickly? I haven't heard it yet.
Sorry, which sound? I was doing
Quinn on the Jaden Daniels situation.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Give me one moment.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, for people of a certain age, he went full Sergeant Schultz on it. Yeah, I don't know. And, look, he was getting ready for a game and this, that, and the other, but it was such news. I don't know how you couldn't completely. He said he was aware that Daniels had issued a statement, thought that was a good move, this, that, and the other, but then he immediately pivoted to just how well Jaden was playing in camp. And,
let me hear it, Max, if you got it. Do you have it? Not yet.
Not yet.
All right, don't worry about it. Ben just gave the summary of it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what he's going to say to that. I think that, of course, this isn't going to affect this team in this moment. It's preparation for the season and his hopeful, rebound season in 26. It's obviously affected very severely the relationship that he has with his alma mater. I think it's recoverable. Other people don't. I think he's a good enough kid and certainly can repair that, at some point. I think the thing that you just have to understand, I would guess, is you don't want this to happen again. This is self-inflicted. This is unforced error at the highest of levels. Anybody that they could have consulted with that had any experience with this stuff could have said, no, don't do this. In addition to, you're not going to get the reaction you want. The timing of it is terrible because you don't want it to happen again and be a distraction when the games are actually going on. Or, I mean, I think a lot of people are already, putting it out into next January and February when there will be likely contract negotiations. Let's hope that was a lesson learned for his sake and for the team's sake, for everybody's sake. It's a lesson learned. There's no guarantee that it was, though. No guarantee at all.
Right. And I do think, I know I'm not going to do my best to not have this turn into the Bryce Harper Nationals. Is he going to get signed with the Yankees bit that just hangs over everybody's head? But this is the point of, you look ahead, okay, the people that helped him make this decision will be presumably the people who are going to help him make other decisions, including the contract. And that's the one thing we're all going to be like, okay, assuming he's healthy and assuming he should get it paid and all that, that's going to be the big question hanging over it. And, situations like this make you be a little bit more nervous than, you like to think you would be when most of these things are somewhat cookie cutter to a degree, but, we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I will talk to you later on this week.
By the padded practices, the next 2 days is the apparent plan. So keep that in mind.
So padded practices as in Tuesday and Wednesday.
Correct.
So the starters aren't going to play on Saturday. Right.
I mean, it's trending that way, but, I guess if you don't play Tuesday, Wednesday, and you're off Thursday, Friday, then that gives you some time. And, again, do I think, say, Deron Payne's out there? I mean, probably not. Do I think some of the younger guys to be out there? Sure. Jaden, that's the big question.
When does training camp officially end? It's this week, right? It usually is right before that second preseason game.
No. Training camp's still going on for a bit here. I think it doesn't typically go through the last game. I think it goes through the last game, doesn't it?
I think in recent years it's ended earlier and earlier. At least calling it training camp.
Yeah, I mean, there is a point where it transitions where one day we're out there and the next day we're not. But I think that's going to be a bit. Usually that's like sort of around the point when they trim to 53, and that's when it all kind of ends. But look, man, I don't remember what happened yesterday. I'm getting old, Kevin.
I love, by the way, that, and I just saw this, that Ben in his Substack listed all of the potential quarterbacks that they could bring in. And one of them was Phillip Rivers. Yeah, can you imagine? Yeah, I'll come in and play third string preseason football for you.
That was mostly a joke, but again,
I know.
But also because guys like
Driscoll would be a possibility. He was, he was a teammate of Blau's, right? And he was here before.
I mean, again, to me, without knowing Mariota's exact situation, I'd be calling Driscoll right now and being like, "Come on in," because he's an adult in the room, so to speak. He's actually done some of these things. Like, let's just say Jaden doesn't play. Then what do you against Detroit? Well, then what are you doing? You're going just with the two guys who have no experience. I mean, presumably, right, Detroit's going to play their better guys, right? And typically, if this is the game. So now you're going with Ethan Kaliakmanis and Sam Hartman against a Lions team that possibly has a bunch of guys, and you want to see your own guys. Again, maybe it's too late for that in terms of a Driscoll, but like that's how I would be thinking.
I'm going to tell you right now what Detroit's going to do. Detroit is, that's week 2 of the regular season. My fault. Week 2 of the preseason. Where's the number here? It's not up. There's no number on the. Oh, here it is. Detroit's -2.5. So there's a number. So they're less than what Miami was on the road. All right, I got to run. Thanks.
See ya.
Ben Standing, everybody. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So college football opens up 2 weeks from this Saturday with what they call week 0. There will be a couple of games of note. Really, TCU and TCU will play North Carolina, Bill Belichick's squad in Dublin. And then the following week, which is a late Labor Day weekend this year, you get the full-fledged college football week number 1. Clemson LSU kind of highlights that week 1. We don't have what we had last year, week 1, which was a 1 versus 2 showdown with Texas and Ohio State. But the preseason AP poll is out. Just moments ago, the preseason college football poll came out, and here it is. Ohio State's ranked number 1. Oregon is 2. Big Ten at the top. Georgia 3. Texas 4. Notre Dame 5. Last year's national champion, Indiana, is 6. Miami 7. Texas A&M's 8. Oklahoma is 9. And Ole Miss is 10. Now, last year's preseason college poll had Texas at 1, Penn State at 2, Ohio State at 3, Clemson at 4, and Georgia at 5. Penn State obviously had a disastrous season in which James Franklin got fired. Clemson did not have a great season at all. College football, because of the portal and all of these transfers, it's getting to be almost as hard to predict as the NFL is. Every season now is a new season in college sports. College basketball in particular, where you have so few players that can really impact a season negatively or positively, that switch, and a team you don't see coming all of a sudden ends up being great because they got 1 or 2 guys that were on the rise and ended up being much better than anybody thought. But college football last year, Texas, Penn State, Clemson, 3 of the top 4 teams in the land last year. And those teams did not end up making it to the playoff. It's hard to pick this sport. And I'm looking at, just because it just came out, and I do love this sport, just to see the conference breakdown. So Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, 3 in the top 10 from the Big Ten. And then the SEC is Georgia, Texas, A&M, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss. 5 from the SEC, and then you've got Miami from the ACC and Notre Dame as an independent. So, man, the top 2. And then you go LSU, then you go Alabama at 11, your first Big 12 team at 12 with Texas Tech, LSU 13, USC 14, more SEC Big 10, then BYU, Michigan, Penn State, Tennessee, Washington. I mean, the top 25 just dominated by Big 10 and SEC schools. SMU, Utah, Iowa, Clemson, Houston, Missouri. How many Big 10 teams are ranked? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of the Big 10 teams are ranked in the top 25, even more from the SEC. Crazy. No, Maryland's not in the top 25, Terp fans.
Not yet.
And they're not, among others, receiving votes. Not yet, he says. Look, I've talked to some people who've been, at practice. They love the new OC, Malik Washington, who is, had a phenomenal freshman season last year at Maryland. People really like. I was not the biggest believer. I thought he was good. I didn't think he looked like a first-round NFL pick, which is what people were saying. But he was only a freshman, and he's being coached by somebody new. And we'll see what happens. Maryland's got a Week 3 game at home in College Park against Virginia Tech on a Saturday night. That's going to be, I'm telling you right now, the season. Because if they're going to go win 6, 7 games and be a bowl team, they're going to have to win those first 3 games against Hampton. They're a 45-point favorite. UConn, and then Virginia Tech. And then they've got some really key games and winnable games in conference at home against teams like UCLA, Rutgers, Even a team like Wisconsin, later in the year, and they play Purdue. It's a week. Wow, I'm looking at it. It's a week Big Ten schedule. They play at Purdue. They do play at Ohio State. Okay, at Nebraska, at USC, and they play Penn State at home at the end of the year. Big year for Mike Locksley. There's no doubt about that. I would say I can't imagine that if they don't win 6-7 games and go to a bowl game, that he's back next year. But I think they have a chance. They have a chance. They should be really good on defense, even though they lost Zahir Mathis last week. That's a big loss for them. One of their true edge, outstanding pass rushers. Sidney Stewart is the other one. But this should be a team that, is competitive more than they were last year. I do worry that if they're close games, they don't seem to get over the hump in some of those. So we'll see what happens this year. All right. Back to the NFL. After this, I do want to mention real quickly that Window Nation is offering a very good deal between now and the end of the month. The deal is this: 50% off of everything. And when I say everything, it's not just windows, it is also doors. That's right. Window Nation sells doors, and you're getting 50% off of everything they sell if you schedule a free in-home estimate by the end of the month. Call them at 866-90-NATION or head to windownation.com. Mention my name. They'll schedule a fast, free in-home estimate. It'll take an hour or less. You'll actually find out what is too old and should be replaced versus what is just fine to leave alone. And then if you move forward with them, you're going to get the 50% off of everything. Plus, you've got an option of financing the purchase with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest charged for 2 full years. Window Nation or at 866-90-NATION or go to windownation.com. Please mention my name.
Going back and watching Sonny, it kind of looked like, from a mental standpoint, like the run fits and the assignments and kind of being confident in the way that he was moving, looked like it was all really kind of there. Is that accurate from your viewpoint? And if it is, like how much encouragement does that give you that he's kind of on the path to becoming what you need him to be this season?
Yeah, I've never once thought anything other than that, honestly, because of like way back from the very beginning, David, I felt like somebody who was really detailed and paid attention to it, wants to find it. If you asked him, he didn't get downhill enough, didn't, take a shot when it was there. But he gets great depth in the zones. I think that's going to be one of the things that, perhaps his safety background helps, where you might see an inside backer there at 6 yards, 7 yards. He gets deep, man. And so those are the things that I like. In the weeks ahead, I want to see the blitzing. You even see it at practice. We'll have some one-on-ones with backs and backers. So I think that's another part of his game that he and Leo and Frankie all have. So that's kind of a good thing, as a defensive play callers here. Okay, I've got this one. He can show, blitz the other. So that's something we know Frankie has that, part of his game. So I want to see a little bit more of that as the practices go. But for the first time out, like real command, ready to play.
Dan Quinn talking about Sonny Styles wearing the green dot, meaning he's the guy that will communicate, or did, with Durante Jones, Frankie Louvu more likely when the regular season starts. Our Waldorf Honda poll of the day were you pleased with Sonny Styles and his 2 series in the game? That's all he played, people. 2 series with the green dot. Yes, very pleased. He's got some work to do. No, I'm concerned. I would just say I have no earthly idea, because he only played in 2 series in the game, one of them against the Miami starters without many of the starters around him on defense. I do want to mention real quickly that if you've got issues with HVAC in your home, the place to go to is Foley Mechanical. Dan Foley is the owner. It's not a franchisee. It's not a hedge fund that owns them or some sort of investment fund, private equity. He owns the company. He controls the quality start to finish, and he does a great job of it. We worked with him about 8-9 months ago. We had a problem in our home. He came out himself, put his team to work, and they fixed the problem. He controls the quality from the equipment to the people he hires. His team, professional, skilled, and sharp. Foley Mechanical is a full-service heating and air conditioning and hot water and boilers company. They're the go-to for older homes with radiator heat, a real specialty in the DMV. And that's where they work, across D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. And across the DMV, they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your system needs help or you just want it done right, call Dan Foley at Foley Mechanical and tell him that I sent you. Tough weekend for the Nats. They got swept on the road by the Mets. A bullpen loss on Saturday. They took a lead, a 3-run lead into the ninth. 2-run lead, 3-run lead into the. Sorry, they took a lead into the ninth and gave up 2 runs to lose 5-4. They had some issues in the bullpen on Friday night as well, but 3 straight losses now put them at 6 games below 500 at 60-66, and they have faded to all the way back to 7.5 games. Forget about it. They're done. I mean, not that this is a revelation after the trade deadline moves. Meantime, the Orioles won 3 in a row over Tampa on the road over the weekend, and the Orioles, with a record of 2 games below 500, are currently in the American League, the 3rd wild card team. That's crazy. The 3rd wild card right now in the American League is a team 2 games under 500, and all of the teams battling for it are under 500. Somebody will likely, by the time we get through the next 40 or so games, end up having a winning record, but barely a winning record, more likely than not. How about the Dodgers and what's happened to the LA Dodgers in the West? The Dodgers have really struggled since the big trade for Skubal. They lost 3 of 4 to Milwaukee over the weekend. They're currently now in a spot in the National League where they'd have to play in the wild card round because both the Braves and the Brewers have a better record than the Dodgers. So they would have to open up in a 3-6 series against somebody like either the Phillies or the Padres, more likely than not, in the National League. We'll be there before we know it, late September, with all of these races coming down the stretch.
Real quick, Kev, before we go, we've been talking about the Tony Romo and CBS and the contract and all that, but from Front Office Sports, J.J. Watt has been elevated to CBS's lead NFL booth alongside Jim Nantz after Tony Romo's arrest. One source tells Front Office Sports that the decision on Romo may already be made. They demand loyalty, but give none, is the quote.
We knew that he was elevated to the number one spot, but is Front Office Sports reporting that this now will be that it's permanent?
Yeah, sources suggest the job may already be his to lose, referring to J.J. Watt. So it sounds like
they already announced last week or the week before that he's going to the number one team with Nantz for the regular season, or for the early part of the regular season until Romo's charges are, handled in late September. I think it's late September. Yeah, I mean, I think they're using this. Yeah. I kind of felt this way from the jump, is that they don't love him. They haven't loved him for a few years, but they invested so heavily, and this is an opportunity for them to try to get out of it. It looks like they will. Real quickly, Scotty Scheffler, man, it makes a difference when you can putt. He has had putting issues pretty much all year long. He ran away with the Memphis St. Jude yesterday and won by 8 shots. And by the way, Rory just barely qualified for the next round, right? Is Rory in the next round? I think he is. Am I right about that or not? Because they go from that number down to 50 next week, right? I don't know. We'll check on it. We're done for the day. Chris is next.